Welcome to the show. I'm Scuba, this is Music Not Diving, and it's part 2 of our Bangalore special right here in Bangalore.
This is Music Not Diving with Scuba.
I was in Bengaluru, aka Bangalore, to play a party with DJ El Cid, the man I started Hot Flush Recordings with all the way back in 2003. He's been out of the game for a very long time, but dipping his toes back in the water with this party called Ends and Means. A lot of fun, and the next night we took the opportunity to see a bit of Bangalore after dark, chill out a bit, and get ready for the next day of filming, because of course last week we covered our episode with Cora, and on this week's episode of the podcast we have my interview with Film, one of the absolute best producers coming out of India right now, a man who really knows his way around techno and someone who's been around for a long time too. So just so many insights from this man on the topic of production, but also the scene in India, the different micro scenes throughout the country, and the way the music has developed there over time. This is a really interesting insight into the mind of an absolutely top producer who's coming at the music from a slightly different angle. Let's head over to the studio and check out my conversation with one of India's best producers, Film. Film, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming. How you doing?
This is a pretty full circle movement. I'm doing good, but yeah, I gotta tell you that I'm like a huge fan.
Okay.
And I'm saying like...
You're not just saying
2000, like since you started the label.
Okay. Wow, really?
Yeah, I have like records from the 2009, 10, Joy Orbison, all these records from back in the day. Because I used to run like a post-dubstep party in Delhi.
No way.
Yeah.
That was not...
There were like exactly 3 people in Delhi who knew the sound. And it's just like, we were running like a party for like 20 of our friends.
This was not in my notes. I didn't realize this at all. Right. Okay. So you from Delhi originally?
Yep.
Right. Okay. And right, a small nascent post-dubstep party. Did anyone come over to play from Europe, or were you guys just sticking on the scene?
You know Adam Wedge? Yes.
That's the name I haven't heard for a while.
From Bristol?
Yeah.
Yeah, we like Delhi had like a bass music. I still have a bass music scene more than anywhere else in the country.
Is that right? Okay.
Just because there were a lot of British expats living there.
Okay.
And they were like importing kind of like, records from London, whatever. Yeah. And then we ended up having more jungle, bass, house, techno mixed with all. And then, we discovered your sound, and then we just started doing parties around that sound at that point of time.
Okay. Right. I mean, it was a brilliant time of, it was a brilliant point for the scene, generally, the bass music scene, generally speaking, whether it's drum and bass, whatever, like that kind of early dubstep thing was, I mean, I'm not just saying that because I was part of it, but I mean, it genuinely was. I think looking back at it now, it does hold up as being one of the good periods.
Yeah, it's still like Delhi, the 140 scene is still there.
Okay.
Somehow, like,
are you involved in that much? Because I mean, obviously, the majority of your output is I suppose at least techno adjacent, right?
Yes, I mean, when I started, I was like a jungle DJ.
Okay,
drum and bass jungle DJ, and then I kind of went through the whole process of going through house, techno, everything in between, whatever. But yeah, they were like big bass music parties back in like Delhi, and then that was our main thing basically. It was like a very, very small scene because it wasn't as big as like the house or techno scene.
Yeah.
Different venues, different clubs, different like audience. So that...
Yeah. I mean, that was the story of it basically everywhere, to be honest. I mean, it caught on to some extent. I mean, a certain part of obviously dubstep became huge, but that was obviously, the stuff that, and right. None of us really liked that.
Because reggae was also big in Delhi.
Okay.
So that kind of like all syncs up.
Right.
MCs, rappers, just
so it made
hanging about, doing that, all that.
Yeah, right. Okay. Okay. So, I mean, let's just zoom out for a bit.
Yeah.
You're involved in all kinds of different aspects of the scene, generally speaking. We were just talking off camera about how you
there's nothing left for me to do except open a label.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
So just give us an overview of what you're doing now, like what the different things you're involved in.
Okay. The last 15 years, I think, now I'm kind of just doing my own parties and trying to like write different kinds of music. I would say beyond electronic music as well. But in the last 15 years, I've managed to have like run like an agency, which was like the first, like kind of like a proper network for like DJs to play around. Before us, there were management agencies and booking agencies, but they were mostly for bands.
Okay.
This was like the first, like the DJ roster of like 22 people.
Yeah.
Just like touring around the country.
Yeah.
So we really...
All Indian DJs.
All Indian DJs. And I think we kind of set up networks for them to play, like every weekend or whatever.
Yeah.
And activate like smaller city, tier 2, tier 3 cities. Cities apart from Delhi, Bombay and Bangalore. So that I did for like 5 years. Then I ended up running a club for 7 years in Delhi.
Which club?
Oro and Summer House. It's kind of like seminal clubs. It was kind of required at that point of time to kind of do because it's like a 250 cap venue.
Okay.
But we've had Khurrangbin, Fortet, TVS one in a tiny ass like club.
Nice.
So running a club, and then I was always throwing parties, I think since the very beginning. And this kind of dates back to like when I was like in high school, a pro video gamer. I used to do LAN parties.
You were a pro video gamer?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's the whole love with electronic music kind of started from electronic music and video games.
Right.
Basically.
Okay.
That's the only thing I really like. I'm still trying to crawl back into that.
Right. Wow.
Yeah,
okay.
Like getting back into...
Did you have a specific game that you...
Unreal Tournament.
Okay.
I've represented the country. Like I've gone around. Yeah.
Wow.
And then I was even throwing LAN parties back when I was like in high school. When I was like 15.
Okay.
And they would people come lug all their monitors and like, those CRT monitors and like the big ass.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, the PC from like Chennai to Delhi, which is like a 36-hour journey.
Okay.
Yeah. Having like a Counter-Strike clan. So that was my like entry point to electronic music, actually, not through like clubs at all.
Okay.
It's just because there was a lot of electronic music in video games.
Sure.
And
absolutely.
It was like 20 dudes all night sharing music, whatever, doing whatever. And then it kind of started from that. And then this is all like, now I'm at a point where I'm just like, I managed to release an album, have my own music going on. And then, last 3 years, I've just been trying to learn songwriting.
Okay.
Like in the traditional sense.
Okay.
Because I think every electronic music at some point wants to pick up a guitar and like...
Secretly, yes. Yeah. It's usually probably not best advice for most people, including myself, but yeah.
A lot of hook theory and core. Like, I really wanted to know how to do that. And then in the last 2 years, I've been managed to like study, mug up all information, how somebody does that.
Okay.
And now I just want to kind of work with voices, like human voices, like characters and human voices.
Okay.
So that's where I'm at right now. And then I'm just also still running one party. Which is kind of like an anti-party because it's no lineup announcement, no tickets online. It's just at the gate. I'm consistently getting like 500 people in Delhi.
Really? Wow.
With no lineup announcement.
What kind of music is it generally speaking?
All sorts of music.
That's incredible. So people don't really know what it's going to be.
There's no lineup announcement. There's no tickets online.
No particular music policy.
Yep. And the phone cameras are kind of banned. Yeah.
So people have an extremely high degree of trust in what it is.
But I think it's also kind of like FOMO. Like I'm playing through that emotion because I think it kind of works where people really don't know.
So it's acquired a kind of cachet and people want to be there.
And every time the lineup is bigger than the last one.
Okay.
I'm keep upping the ante.
So that people know there's going to be something big is going to happen.
So I just did one in Goa for like 250 people.
Okay.
Like, I've never thrown a party in Goa. It's the first party I ever threw in Goa.
Right.
250 people with no lineup.
Nice.
Yeah.
Amazing. What's it called?
It's called No More Parties in Delhi.
Okay.
Kanye track. No More Parties in LA.
Right. Yeah, okay. Okay, crazy. Wow. So do you consider yourself to be mostly a producer now? Obviously you got this party, but like how do you see yourself?
I want to aspire to be.
Okay.
Because I think a lot of my peers, they still kind of, they were artists. Mostly they were artists and kind of just touring, making music, whatever. I ended up doing a lot of back-end stuff, admin work, because I'm all sorts of stuff, festivals, clubs, consultation, conferences. Okay. So I've aged a bit like older than most of my peers because I don't want to be in clubs anymore. Like it's one of those things, not for too long.
Okay.
I've been in clubs Monday to Friday on day, like working day jobs, done all that. So I've been primarily in the last 2 years trying to shift my attention to, let's just try to make more music. All sorts of music.
Right.
And
Yeah, I mean, because your catalogue is varied, like really varied. I mean, the majority of it is, as I said, sort of at least sort of adjacent to techno, but obviously you've got the specific techno alias Tyrell Dub Corp, which I have to say, that's great techno, man.
Cheers,
It
man.
really is. Like,
glad to hear that, yeah.
that's the proper, that's the real. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? But all of your stuff is it feels adjacent to that, right? But when you're talking about getting into songwriting, that's something different. And to what extent are you a trained musician? Like, did you do stuff when you were a kid? Did you play instruments?
I learned everything on the job, but in the last 2 years, just I realized working with musicians, that is kind of, I don't want to be the dumb person in the room.
Right.
So I really had to like start doing theory and all that. And then it kind of helps, I would say.
This is a question we've asked many times on the show, as you'll probably be aware, because if you've watched the show before, like, it's interesting talking to someone who has made the effort to learn mid-career,
Yep.
right? Because it's normally something you do when you're a kid or whatever. Some people learn instruments or whatever and do theory exams. That was me. And lots of people obviously don't know. And the opinion of those people that don't know theory is usually like, oh, well, I don't need to know it. It was going to ruin my music making or whatever somehow. So it's helped you, has it?
I'm also like a fan of sampling because like secretly I always wanted to be like a hip hop producer. That was my thing. That's why I'm into like samplers.
I've seen you've got an MPC on your Instagram feed.
So, but what I did realize after, this is the thing with like, I think gatekeeping with a lot of like, I think really good classic forms of like house and techno. Nobody really, like underground musicians, they were all trained musicians.
Right.
It's not happening on the fly.
Yeah. I mean, Juan Atkins did
Mike Banks is a crazy keyboardist.
I mean, yeah, Cybertron, I mean, he's a graduate in music. Do you know what I mean? Like, literally went to uni and did it. Like,
and while like on the path of learning music theory, chord theory, I kind of realized all these 100 biggest dance music tracks have something in common.
Right.
You start seeing it when you learn theory.
Yeah.
And that's, I think in the last 2 years, I started putting in my tracks and it kind of works.
Right.
When you kind of know what you need to do. And then obviously I would say like, I am actually a fan of technology always. Like Scalar, using Scalar has changed my like complete entire music making process. Mm-hmm. But before that, if you just open Scalar and then it, throw up, like, try to stick stuff on the wall, it doesn't work like that.
Yeah.
But once you know theory, the Scalar becomes like you have like a trained pianist right in front of you.
Yeah, right.
Like, writing chords or whatever, and then you can,
Yeah, I mean, because people often talk about randomization as part of a techno making, the process of making techno. Like, and I suppose that whole thing about, well, anyone can do it. Like you say, throw as much stuff at the wall as possible. It's almost like the AI thing, which we'll come on to in a minute, by the way. Yeah. But like you say, I mean, I'm totally an advocate of this, and it is gatekeeping to a certain extent. But technical knowledge of any sort is valuable, right?
100%. I think so.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I wish I had like a better voice. I would have started using it in music for sure.
Okay.
Like I envy like all people like James Blake and all that, because that is great.
Yeah, well, if you can sing, you can sing.
Because it's unique, like your voice is unique, and then you can do a lot with it. Yeah.
No, that's an interesting example actually, because when he first started doing his full vocal stuff, obviously the early James Blake stuff also has him on, but it's very kind of disguised. When Limit to Your Love came out, the first one when people could hear him sing, it's like, this guy can actually really sing, kind of thing. But then as his stuff developed, he definitely had like, I think it was the first album and the second album. I remember, I knew him a bit back then because he was part of Band Kimby at the start. But I remember reading him talking about it in interviews, and he was very much of the opinion that people wanted to hear processed vocals as opposed to just him singing. And I mean, I was just like, actually, I just want to listen to you sing. If you've got a beautiful voice like he has, I mean, why would you? I mean, let's talk about AI since I mentioned it. And you're a tech guy. What is your opinion of AI tools in music? Not necessarily just like the Suno thing, but like,
I mean, I think in music, AI has been used forever. Like sequencers are, in my opinion, effectively
an extension of that.
I mean, when you are kind of hitting randomization on those Max 4 Live sequencers, it's already, you're using AI. It's all your MIDI tools on Ableton, everything is kind of AI. I think music has been using AI, and you can kind of hear Slop. It never really.
Oh, there's loads of Slop.
It's very obvious. I don't think it can replace human beings that easily, because human beings by nature we kind of want to, put a stamp of like our authenticity in music. So I don't think it's that. In design, is still I would say it's kind of easy to get away with, because it's a very visual medium. Music, I think everybody kind of wants to do their own thing. The slop, you can kind of hear it doesn't really translate, because I don't know about you, but I make music out of it's like a journal, in some feeling somewhere.
Right.
I don't
really.
really,
Okay.
yeah. I mean, how a quintessential question of what inspires you. For me, it's when you're in a club a little away from the dance floor, a little bit higher, whatever, you can hear it in a distance. You can hear something.
With the reverb.
That's what I try to recreate in the studio. It's like 7 a.m. somewhere, 8 a.m. somewhere, 3 p.m. somewhere.
Yeah.
So I think at least dance music, that's how I try to write dance music. It's basically like that. What I felt at the moment, like listening to a Jane Fitz, listening to some amazing DJs. So it's like a feedback loop for me. So I don't think AI can do that, man. Before, how is going to do that? Yeah.
Well, there's two sides of it, aren't there? There's the, like I said, the Suno, press a button, give it a prompt, something comes out. But then also there's, like you said, there are tools in plugins and explicitly LLM based tools now in the products, which have been in some cases, trained on data, trained on other people's data. Where do you stand on the kind of copyright issue? Because this is something which goes back to the very start of the internet.
I think it is problematic. I think even was it SoundCloud? I'm not Spotify, when we got to know that they are using that to train their models, which is problematic because they have the catalog of everything. But again, coming back to AI, music made by AI, sure it is maybe replace, those sync kind of 30-second things. Yeah, that's going to get replaced. That's not going to be made by humans anymore. I don't think so. Because it's like capitalism. It's just going to be cheaper to download a bank of 100 things, instead of asking, commissioning a human being to do that. So, but yeah, that was problematic, and I'm not 100% sure on how these Suno. Yeah, I'm not 100% sold on it that they are using our kind of music to build their models. Of course, it's going to get somewhat 20-30% close to style, copying styles or whatever. Maybe you could, what happened with sample libraries.
Well, that's what I was going to say. Yeah, because it does relate to the concept of sampling.
It's going to go down that path that I need a track in Scuba track. It'll happen. It'll show up.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the copyright aspect of it. I mean, you mentioned the kind of the use of sampling, which is so important, obviously, in dance music, so important in different styles, but it's foundational. Mentioned that in our previous conversation, which is going to be going before this one, I think, so I can mention it. I was listening to Fat of a Land by Prodigy last night, and the reason that I was listening to Fat of a Land is because Bauer, that guy, on his Instagram goes through that Who Sampled What website, and he's picking out the samples, and he's showing them, showing you where they're used in the song, and all those Prodigy tracks.
I follow him, and it's a great. I love his page.
It's awesome, isn't it? Yeah, and he did No Good Start a Dance, and it's these little bits of old funk records and stuff, and God knows whether they sampled, whether they cleared them. Because that's the other thing, because not everything on that Who Sampled Who site is cleared. I mean, Burial being a great example of that. There's so many uncleared Burial samples, which we've discussed on the show before. But I mean, and actually, we had on the show recently Slipmat, the hardcore producer. And obviously that era was just the kind of Wild West in terms of sampling, right? So from a sort of copyright / creativity perspective, because this does relate to the AI stuff too, right? Do you have a kind of general intuition about what's fair use of other people's work?
I'm not 100% sure on that, because I sample from YouTube all the time. Yeah, because I think there was that era when these guys were like DJ Shadow and all that, then they were collecting huge record collections. Now somebody just uploaded that collection on YouTube, and there are all these channels. Some of us, some of us who are really into sampling, we have these secret channels where I can find stuff. who's like basically gone through this pain of uploading all the 50s and the 60s jazz funk records,
right.
and like I'm gonna gatekeep those channels till like to the end of my life. Yeah, and I sample from that all the time because I think I can't buy those records. It's just it's going to be an expensive affair to start buying those records. You go to Discog, it's like £1,000. Like,
Yeah, and it's not like the people who made the records are getting paid anyway. Do you know what I mean? It's the person who owns the record. So,
but I think sampling without sampling, what is dance music? Like I would. It's I don't know. Like it would be that interesting.
it would be very different.
It would be very different. Yeah, like house music, like the old 90s house music. If they were not sampling it, I'm not sure if it would have translated that well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I certainly like we obviously have the Roland instruments, but there was not many tunes which were just that. You know, even in techno. Like, so what's your studio like now? How do you make a tune, generally speaking? Let's say you're going to sit down and write a techno tune. The new Tyrell Dub Corp EP needs to get written. How are you going about it?
I mean, now I've been fortunate to acquire like a bunch of stuff in the last like 15 years. But like I started really, really simple. I think I bought like a ARP Odyssey. Korg.
Yeah, it's a good place to start.
Yeah. And then I went to the path of kind of start collecting 90s synths specifically, because I think they are in that little thin line of getting away from analog to being really bad VSTs in a box.
Yeah.
So I love that.
Those digital.
So I have like MS-2000 Korg, which is like,
I know that.
which is kind of like the first VST synth, you know. But I did also try modular, but like it's something that doesn't work with my brain that much in the sense they are
The analog modeling ones.
like generally like modular synthesizer.
Oh, modular, sorry.
It's just not for me.
Yeah. No, me either. It seems like a kind of rabbit hole that if you even went down it slightly, you would be very lost.
But I've got all the classic, like TX81G, Yamaha R1MX. I really love the groove boxes instead of like very standalone kind of synths who do one thing.
Okay.
I'm more into like groove
workstation
boxes.
stuff.
Yeah. Those Electron Syntac, whatever. But the MPC is like my kind of heart of everything. Because what I tend to do is I'll work a set like a project on Ableton. Then I'll put them into 16 pads, which is something like a Carl Craig technique of like kind of making music, where he's like putting everything on the MPC and then rearranging everything instead of arranging it on Ableton. So I gave up arranging on Ableton quite a while back, I think.
Okay.
Just when I'm writing dance music or something.
What was the advantage in your experience?
I think it's more hands-on. It's kind of more intuitive. Instead of looking at a screen, it's more like hearing. That samplers, I think, give you that. Also, like the MPC had these effects which, I don't know, it just sound bad sometimes, but you want that effect, like, you know. It's like a small thing, maybe like a plate reverb on like a MPC. It doesn't sound like any plate reverb plugin I had. Or I don't know, maybe it's like a faulty machine or something, but that's the job,
Sometimes that's the best thing, right? Yeah.
But people who've played enough with samplers will tell you that the MPC workflows is amazing. Like it's fast.
Yeah, I've never used one actually. I mean, I've had samplers in the past, but not pad-based samplers. So we were talking off camera. I had an old EMU ESI 4000. That was the first thing I had. But I was using it with these are my very early dubstep tracks were made on that setup. So I had an ESI, I had a little mixer. I was running I was running Cakewalk version like 4 or something, right? And everything's coming. So basically, it's just powering the sampler. Basically, and some of it sounds all right. I mean, but I think the transformers out, those EMU samples are great. I mean, on your Instagram, you got a 64.
I think I'm more about the process. It's really, really like, it's such a hard way to like make music for me, like, because I've made music on like a laptop and DAW all my life. So when I started acquiring like these old machines, I really enjoy like working on one rees for like 2 days on like a EMU. And like try to like see like a Dillinja video, like
right. And then you
get a flashy mixer.
He's slamming it into his DAT machine far too hard.
So then 2 of my friends like Nikki Nair and Idiot Jeep, they both kind of just pushed the mixer. You know,
it's crazy.
Yeah, like red line, and then I started really getting into that. Okay, let's just push the signal too much.
Yeah, right. I mean, I love that sound.
Start using feedback loops in the mixer.
Yeah. Awesome. So Okay. So basically, actually, this is sort of similar to had Mr. G on the show a while back.
Yep.
And he was talking about his workflow and getting that kind of real, like, loose kind of sound.
Yep.
To the arrangement as well as the actual sonics of it. It's that I think that's the problem with working completely in the box.
Yeah, I think Ableton for me now is just like a glorified arranger. Sometimes just to like make sense of stuff and also do like edits. Otherwise, mostly I'm just trying to like drive the mixer through and like putting back everything here and trying to, I always want like a patch bay. I finally got one, and now like one stuff is going to the other. Like it's just it's more fun. Yeah.
Yeah. Nice. Okay. Let's talk a little bit about your time in Berlin.
Yeah.
Because you were lucky enough to do the Border Movement Residency.
Correct. Yeah. It's like an exchange program between, I think it's still around.
I didn't know this existed. I was reading about it this morning. It sounds great.
It was a Southeast Asian German exchange with Cathay Institute. And I was fortunate.
Specifically South Asia.
Yep. Just India, Pakistan, Sri Lanka. And I was lucky enough to do that residency for like 2 months.
Had you ever been to Berlin before?
No. So that was fun to do that because I was living above Katablau.
Oh wow, okay. So just go back. You had to apply for this. Is it? There must be a lot of people applying for it, right? So did you have to? Was it based on your music?
Yeah. I mean, a lot of people applied, and then I got like 3 people get selected.
And is it on the basis of
the music? I mean, a lot of interviews.
Yeah. Okay, what kind of shit did they ask you in the interview?
I mean, they just wanted to kind of understand like artistry, like what do you really want to do? Because I think that's what Berlin kind of provides, like a creative outlet.
Yeah.
But yeah, that kind of changed my life in the sense like I was fully absorbed in the club culture, made friends really fast because I like throwing parties. I ended up like one of my friends, Franklin, he was running a party at Grease Mule. Then I became the resident at Grease Mule.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Mother's Finest. It was his party.
Yeah. Oh, right. Okay.
And
I wasn't living in Berlin then. So I lived in Berlin from 2007 to the end of 2014. And so since then I've just been...
So then it became like a thing every summer I would do, basically.
Yeah.
Go to Berlin and try to like figure out, which ended up like, I ended up playing all the clubs, some festivals, Garbage Festival, all these. Yeah.
Let me ask you, I mean, before you got into that, like what were your first impressions of Berlin when you got there?
Honestly, before that we had friends, I wasn't like that overwhelmed, but I knew something like, okay, this is what it is,
Yeah.
But it didn't like culturally shock me that much.
Okay.
I mean, we also party here.
Yeah, of course. But Berlin is its own thing.
It's a different beast, for sure. But yeah, it did open up my mind, like kind of hearing like Ricardo at CDV on Tuesday morning.
Yeah, I mean, you can't get
really like
many other places.
When you've not slept for 3 days, it's a different experience.
That's an important detail. You need to have not slept for 3 days to appreciate.
That's important. Without that, you really can't understand that. But that really opened up my mind of like, how a party can be like a living, breathing organism, like which is like the whole city is kind of around it.
Oh.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So so tell me about more. What do you actually do in the residency? What did it entail?
So obviously I had to document my time there, and then I had like 2 mentors who are like Gabruder Teichmann. They're the Teichmann brothers. They are 4th generation artists from Germany.
Right. Okay.
I mean, their family has always done sound art, something. So they are in the space of, I mean, they play like churches and like, they do a lot of like sound art in Berlin.
Yeah.
So they were my mentors, and they kind of like taught me how to kind of make like, make music more sense than clubs, like apart from just making it for clubs, which I mean, at that point of time, I had no idea. Honestly, I've just made club music. I grew up in club music all my life, but it's like that, how to do like art installation for sound.
Right.
Yeah.
From a technical perspective.
Yeah. From like a very intellectual perspective of, so that 2 months, I think I just kind of did that.
So were you kind of like assisting them on projects they had going on, or
they had something going on? I would go to their like studio, hang out with them, go to their gigs or whatever. Then I had my own studio, and I was living like in the horse market.
Yeah,
like
right.
My neighbor was Acid Pauli and Oliver Koletsky.
Okay. Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, I was in that building basically.
Right.
And I would just pop in, let's say hi, like whatever. Just
Yeah. Actually, they've got podcast studio. We shot a couple of podcasts there last week, actually.
yeah. I mean, it's a great space. I mean,
Yeah.
but there were like bunch of 19 studios there. So like, I got to know everyone. Everybody's like kind of workflow, whatever.
I mean, being in that environment is so great. And that's part of what Berlin is really good for, actually, because even now, I mean, obviously it's got much more expensive, but having those blocks of studios where there's just tons of people, everyone's, you go out for a break, has smoke a cigarette,
For sure.
everyone's chatting, like, what are you working on? Like, amazing, like, exchange of stuff.
I think up until then, I wasn't like a serious producer. I was doing like a kind of dabbling into it all my life.
Yeah.
But that trip kind of changed my whole perspective of doing this from Monday to Friday, like, just like a serious but back in the studio on Monday, like.
Right. And is that how you see it? It's a job kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Me, Matt said,
No, not really. I had to develop an ethic because the first time in my life, I was just sent to do that. Before that, I always had like a day job of running a club, agency, whatever.
Yeah.
So it was like a nice kind of reset. And then when I came back, I just started doing every summer.
Yeah.
And then COVID happened. And then everything just went crashing down.
Yeah.
Because I think after that, just the world became expensive.
Yeah.
And I don't know, something switched in me that I started focusing on India more. That I think we can build our own clubs, our own festival. I just forget about that region for a while.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we are still doing that, kind of like just trying to push it forward instead of like relying on, bookings outside or whatever.
Is that when Unmute started?
Unmute is 2012.
Yeah. Okay. So
Much before the Border Movement Residency.
Yeah. Okay.
So, this is after the residency. I was kind of going to Berlin every year, every summer. And then COVID happened. And then after COVID, the good thing was COVID, I wrote my first album, sort of put it out. So I think just after that, we've just been like focusing on India more.
Yeah. Okay. So talk a bit more about that, like with regards to the agency and with regards to building the scene in certain.
I mean, it all kind of helped because I was right after Berlin. I was a booker at a club, and that really helped me to how to run a club because
you were programming the whole thing.
Yeah, like I ran the club for 7 years.
Yeah. Okay.
Through COVID as well,
wow.
And that taught me so much.
That's an really interesting area actually, because I mean the talent of programming a venue, in a way that just makes sense, in a way that generates trust in people. We had Paul Shinsky from Trezor.
Yep, I saw that podcast
on the show. Yeah. It's really, I think, an underappreciated skill.
100%.
That whole thing.
Yeah. I mean, I would say it took me 15 years to kind of be good at it, half decent at it or whatever. But yeah, after COVID, I think that was like a shift. None of us saw it coming. That the people who would come out of like their houses to club would have such a different perspective of clubbing in general.
Yeah, how was that expressed? Because I mean,
it was that bad that I had to leave my job.
Really?
Yeah.
So what was the difference?
I just couldn't deal with that. I can't just. This is not what I want to book.
Right.
But that's how people are making.
You mean the expectation of the sounds changed?
Yep. I think the whole consumption pattern changed currently overnight, like just not like over a year. And the people who started clubbing from 2021, don't want to name it, but yeah, that.
Be specific. What was the change exactly?
Yeah, the really, I think EDM became techno became EDM, something like that. Yeah. So now I don't think there was any room for experimentation at all, because before COVID, I could have booked like a Moody Man on a Sunday and people would show up. I couldn't do that after that at all.
Really?
Like all the things you thought would work stopped working completely.
Okay.
So there was like a shift. And now I think we are back to kind of pre-COVID scenario.
Gradually righted itself.
I mean, for my own party also. Did we mention about the party? Like with no lineup or something?
Yeah.
That was a social experiment I started last year. Now I kind of noticed that we have back to 2019, where people are seeking out, because there's so much bullshit that happened in the last 5 years. Yeah. They're tired of that. Now they're seeking out like smaller, intimate gatherings or whatever. But it took them to like kind of go through all that. It's still very popular. You can't really beat it. I think it's like, because I've seen EDM come in packages That's the new package. Like, we have to deal with it.
Yeah. The change in consumption pattern that you're talking about after lockdowns, are you talking mostly about the younger generation of people who hadn't been clubbing? Or was
I
it the
don't
whole
throw
thing?
any generation under the bus, but
Yeah,
I
sure.
do think the new generation wants to listen to their Spotify playlist in the club, which is the main difference between me and like that generation.
Yeah.
I want to hear stuff I've not heard ever in a club, right? That's how we used to go out clubbing.
That's why you go clubbing. To hear new
Exactly.
music. Yeah.
But the new generation kind of wants to listen to stuff they listen on Spotify inside a club, inside an event, be present, hear the same artist again, which they've been hearing in their bathroom for the last 24 hours. That's unbelievable to me. But that's what running a club became a bit of a pain.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
that was like kind of like it went too much again, like against what I really wanted to do.
Yeah, right. I mean, we were talking off camera about Boiler Room turning up, and I think Boiler Room is in some ways a kind of symbol of a kind of the kind of change you're talking about, which obviously was very much exacerbated by COVID, but I think it's a kind of longer term shift too. And the kind of performative nature of a Boiler Room event for the audience, brings its own baggage and problems. Tell me what you think about Boiler Room.
I mean, the first time I played it, that is 2017, it was a relevant kind of medium and it did open up doors for me in Europe. I'm not going to deny that. It did happen. Overnight, I had like emails from like, okay, like, because that did happen. I think it can still happen. It still has that power. But I just don't understand the organization anymore. Like it's run like a corporate entity. Which is
it is a club event, so yeah.
Being everywhere, £10,000, you can throw it in a village. Doesn't matter.
Really?
Yeah,
It's out
like
there. They're just kind of selling it.
Yeah, it's that easy now. That's what they did. That was a corporate move they did in the last 4 or 5 years, I would say. So any promoter could kind of do a Boiler Room event. There was no vet. There was no check. And that's why you have 500 streams every year, right?
Right.
So now it's a corporate entity because corporate entities, by nature of being a corporate entity, have revenue model shares or whatever. Now it's kind of irrelevant in my opinion. I don't think like anybody cares, but it still can make or break a career for sure. I would say.
I mean, but it's popular. I mean, you say no one cares, but it's definitely popular, right? Like they can still.
I mean, now because all the entities are owned by like one company, which is a bit problematic to me because like what dance music is supposed to be a little bit anarchist in nature. Like,
You're referring to...
it's like playing for Tesco for me. Like, why are we playing for Walmart and Tesco?
Yeah.
Basically, parent company might as well just do a corporate gig, get more money.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it does, pose questions, right? And obviously, like last summer, there was
and the funding problem, obviously, I mean, it's there. If you want to engage into that politics, you can. But
yeah. Well, that's the thing, because I mean, the involvement of any kind of big corporate entity poses ethical questions. This corporate entity in itself.
Nobody's putting somebody's gun to head to like play Boiler Room. It's your decision. You want to do it, do it. If you don't want to do it.
What are people in India? What are the kind of music fans in India think about?
I don't think music fans care that much because I think by and large it's still a very popular platform. People are going to turn up to these gigs regardless. Sure, people who don't, they don't. But they, by and large, I think it's like a hype kind of brand which attracts numbers, and it's just there.
Is there any kind of like visible blowback? Like, for example, do you see like
my friends,
comments?
we all rejected it. Like, I mean, we're fine. Like, whoever doesn't need to do it doesn't need to do it. Like, I guess in our own little silo, I think we're fine. And I don't really judge anyone to like whatever. If they can, if it helps a career, might as well just do it.
Yeah, I mean it's tricky ethically.
I can't control anybody's career. Like, it's their career. Like,
sure,
yeah.
But I mean, I suppose like the argument against that point of view is that a music scene is a sort of collective in itself, right?
Yep.
Even if that's a kind of like
no, boycott works for sure. It works because when you don't want to give access. I'm like a believer on that. Like, you don't want to give corporate access to everything. If you're a small little collective, I don't think it's a good idea to like give corporate access to like your collective because by the nature of, again, being corporate, they try to just replicate that into 100 more things.
Yeah.
So it just loses the whole soul. With dance music, like one could argue that it's not underground anymore. I kind of hate that term. What is underground? Like there's no
Yeah.
like a small silo of people.
I mean, underground arguably just means something that isn't very popular. Do you know what I mean? So,
And what is not on Spotify, which you can't hear. Like everything is there.
yeah, totally. So, okay, how do you see the scene in India? I got a kind of broad topic actually. First of all, the development of the scene in India and how you see it happening, and also Indian musicians and Indian producers, their position and the position of India in a kind of global circuit, right?
Yep.
Taking India as first of all, like how do you see it developing musically and in terms of the infrastructure on the clubs, and is there are you optimistic, generally speaking, about how it will develop?
I'm pretty optimistic about like pretty much the scene as a whole, because just in the last 2-3 years when I stepped back, just not doing electronic music and also dabbling into other hip hop and like pop, I kind of realized that everything is kind of growing. The new voices from India are really, really strong, and they are very like they want to sound Indian but also sound global, and I think that works.
Let me just interrupt you and ask you about that, because specific Indian sonic influences are not really present in the majority of Indian dance music now, Indian dance music now, and so definitely not in your music.
It's less, but I do think we kind of need that to have a prominent Indian voice for sure. I'm not saying that everybody needs to do it, because it's a dumb argument. Like nobody says it's Spanish techno.
Just putting a tabla in something doesn't really.
But I do think that we do have some really interesting, cool rhythms, which I have also been trying to like develop styles around that. Like kind of, I don't know how much you know about like the Colombian electronic music, Raco and all that.
Yes,
I really think it's interesting what they did with culture and electronic music.
Yeah,
I think like something to blow up from India, we'll probably need to have that. This is just like a very songwriting brain now. In the 2 years, I think like our biggest like kind of Indian, have you heard the Charanjit Singh record? Which was Charanjit, the first acid house.
Oh, yeah.
Right. It also works because it's Indian sounding scale.
Yeah.
Right. So I don't know. I'm trying to kind of still figure it out, because I definitely think the sampling bit of Indian things over house music or drum and bass or whatever is done to death.
Yeah.
Nobody really needs to dabble into that more. It should put to bed, because every 5 years I see a resurgence and it gets popular in India because it's very recognizable, and then these producers really get popular. Okay. Nothing against it, but I do think we need to move away from starting integrating like the new Jeff Mills show. There's a tabla guy there, right there.
Yeah.
Something is happening, Sure. And that's our kind of rhythm. We just haven't owned it properly, I would say.
Okay.
And I'm going to kind of for sure try to experiment.
So it needs to be kind of integrated into music rather than just sticking someone on top.
Yeah, but also I don't want that tag to be there that all Indian people need to make. That's how you are like a techno producer, because that makes no sense. Like, techno is supposed to be like a global voice. Yeah. Nobody like says Bavarian techno, like it doesn't make. Yeah. So, but Indian influence, like something to translate as a big genre. That's what we've not done. Is like personally, I think we need to kind of do again. Is to create like a genre from our like country, which is obviously is going to be Indian sounding, like whatever they.
Yeah, and sorry, I interrupted you. You're talking about the development of Indian scene and the infrastructure around it. So the optimistic view. You are, generally speaking, optimistic about.
I am, because I keep meeting new musicians and all. They are all like, they come with this new energy of, because I might be wrong. I mean, nobody should like quote me on that, but I do think like having like a right-wing government in power, apart from politically whatever happened, it somehow did make people look inwards, which I think all like my generation, millennials, we kind of just were always looking at the West for everything, for inspiration. The new generation is different. They want to be Indian. They'll dress up Western, but they want to be Indian. So I think there's something interesting happening, like in the music space, where they're not going to sing in English. take it or leave it.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So
Interesting.
regionally, it's happening from like small towns, and these people like I get sent like demos sometimes, like a regional guy, but he's put like a drill beat,
Okay.
which is to me interesting.
Yeah. Right.
Because if he's doing like a British accent, that'll sound dumb. Like, yeah.
Right. Yeah, man. Well, I mean, that was the precursor to grime was UK hip hop with the guys putting on American
Yep.
accents, right? I mean, it makes no sense,
Yep.
right? But as soon as you find your voice as the authentic local voice, I guess, and grime's a great example of that.
And India is like a really massive country. I feel like we have 5 countries within our country. So everybody has like a very different, unique voice. Like the north, south, west, east can sound completely different.
Yeah.
If they really start like just focusing on that and integrating with electronic music. So this is something like I also want to kind of start the label for, basically, specifically for this, where I can kind of do this. But it's still like I've been trying to do this for like a long, because the label business also keeps scaring me. Like, yeah.
Yeah, well, you were saying this is the one thing you haven't done, right?
That's the only thing. But
label.
I read this book by Richard Russell, Liberation Through Hearing, XL Recordings.
Mm-hmm.
For me, that's a label who can discover Adele, Prodigy, Wiley at the same time. Yeah. That's an interesting book I read, and then I thought, yeah, that's a good way to start. Like the base, the label out of that where it's not electronic music, but you try to connect weird pieces together.
Yeah. I mean, it's an incredible story, that actually. And obviously, if you can get an Adele in there that can pay for everything else, that's going to help as well, right? But like,
I don't know. I mean, let's see. It's just the label business keeps weirding me out.
Yeah, man. I mean, it's one of the hardest things. I'm always saying to people, this is the hardest bit of the industry. But actually, I think really promoting is probably the hardest bit of the industry. But like, I mean, basically there is no easy part. But running a label, I think, is kind of unique in its challenges, right? Just because I think because the pace of change in terms of like what you have to do to promote a record, to sell a record. I mean, it's ridiculous how many times this has changed, even in the past 5 years. It's crazy.
So the next kind of phase of my party, I really want to start selling music at the party,
right,
as a social experiment.
Okay.
And see how that works.
Okay.
If it works, then I'll definitely start a label.
Selling vinyl, you reckon?
Anything.
Okay.
Digital also, just put like because the party itself is like, there's no lineup, there's nothing to do.
Yeah.
But I do want to kind of experiment, start selling music at the party as like a merch stall or something, and see how that goes. Or whoever is playing on the lineup. Because that's something like I think might raise my interest in like starting a label.
Yeah. That's an interesting.
But I don't think like the usual thing works anymore. Like it's just very convoluted. Like
it's crazy.
People have running a PR agency. Like
yeah. I mean, the old models are, I think, played out, and the people who now are able to be successful are, doing something a fresh take. On it, right? Yeah, interesting. Well, listen, man, this has been great. Just the last one. Indian musicians and their play, and let's talk about techno in particular. The place of Indian techno DJs in the global scene, the global circuit, not just related to Europe, but it's a whole thing. I mean, how do you see that? How hard is it as an Indian DJ to?
Very hard, like, because I think we are isolated in this little silo, away from. I mean, all the foreign press, I would say, just started writing about us like 5 years ago. Before that, there was literally like a brick wall.
Yeah, right.
Where nobody would know what's going on here at all. And breaking through was very, very tough. It still is. I mean, I don't think it's easy at all. Because now, since like it's so expensive to tour,
sure,
that's like an investment. I'm at an age that I'd much rather buy a synth than tour.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
But
me too.
If you start doing that you're going to go down line of spending a lot of money just being in Europe and touring or whatever.
Yeah.
So it's still super hard because we still don't have enough labels, I feel, also. Just doing their own stuff, we still are like a handful of people doing stuff. So I just hope that people don't lose like kind of focus on doing that. Also, if people stay in the country, that's kind of also very important because we all kind of leave.
Yeah, right.
There'll be nothing left here. Yeah.
Totally.
So,
I mean, it seems like it's going in the right direction.
Yeah, 100%. I'm not complaining at all. We are definitely on the right path.
Okay. Yeah. Awesome, man. What is, man? Thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me.
It's been great.
Yes.
Not Diving with Scuba.